Queen Elizabeth II, a symbol of power, is now enduring torment in hell. This sounds absolutely insane, right? How could someone who once ruled over a vast empire and was admired by the entire world end up in hell? That's exactly what I exclaimed when I read the letter from this man. He had a near-death experience and firmly asserts that with his own eyes he saw Queen Elizabeth II. In fact, she even shared all the secrets of the royal family with him. But what's even more terrifying is that when he returned, he brought with him her prophecy about the future of the very nation she once ruled. So what are these secrets? What future awaits England? Stay with us until the end, as it might change your perspective on world history and your own life. Before we begin, leave a comment with your name and the city you're living in so we can pray for you and ask God to remember you in His plan. If this message touches your heart, please support this mission by clicking the Super Thanks button. Whatever you give, God will return it 100-fold. Together, let's build a strong faith community where 20,000 hearts will unite to spread the love of God this month by subscribing to our channel. Now, let's listen to his testimony. Dear Eternal Bible Stories, if I were to start anywhere, I would tell you about the night I almost died on the hospital bed, but doing so would skip over the whole reason why I was there in the first place. My name is Jason. I'm 55 years old, born and raised in Ohio, and I've spent most of my life studying the history of England, particularly its monarchy. It all began as a strange hobby when I was in college, just a distraction from my troubled family life, but over the years it grew into something much larger. I wrote books about her, taught courses on her heritage, and gave lectures all over the country. I even joked that she felt like a distant grandmother to me because she seemed so familiar, as close as the steady rhythm of her life that brought order to my own. But despite all of that, my connection to faith slowly faded away. I grew up going to church every Sunday, but once my career was established, God and I stopped really communicating with each other. Religion became an abstract concept, something from another world. I was fine with it in a historical sense, even respecting it, but I didn't feel it personally. If you had asked me back then, I would have said that my career was my purpose. I believed that history held all the answers. Learning about rulers, the decisions that shaped entire nations, was like looking into the heartbeat of civilization. That was how I explained life without relying on the idea of divine intervention or salvation. 2 weeks ago, a horrific car accident changed everything. I only remember driving home after a lecture on the slippery road from the rain. A car swerved past, its headlights flashing, and then a powerful impact threw me out of reality. The memory of that moment is just a collection of vague fragments. Medical staff said my heart stopped beating twice on the way to the hospital. They didn't think I could survive. In the cold room of the hospital, as my consciousness flickered, I felt myself standing on the edge, suspended between life and death. Time seemed to stop, and in that moment, I realized that all the achievements I had once been proud of, the lectures, the books, the years spent studying kings and queens, had become meaningless. Lying there, blood flowing, body shattered, I faced a painful truth. I had spent my whole life pursuing history, but I had never truly sought a deeper meaning for myself. All those long nights with books, all the efforts to build a career, suddenly turned to nothing. The emptiness, something I had always tried to ignore, now rose up, growing larger, drowning me. The accident wasn't just a physical shock, but also a wake-up call. It forced me to face the insignificance of what I had once considered important, and it stirred in me a haunting question. Could I find a real purpose, something beyond books and fleeting legacies? In the moment my consciousness drifted away from my body, I felt myself floating, escaping the weight of the physical form and hovering in an undefined space. Darkness surrounded me, deep and cold, like an endless ocean. But at the edge of that darkness, a faint light flickered, small, fragile, yet enough for me to cling to. It was like a gentle whisper, telling me that I didn't necessarily have to be lost. The old path had closed, but a new journey, full of mystery, was opening before me. I floated in the void, and suddenly a presence appeared. It was Dr. Andrews, the doctor who had cared for me years ago. He stood there, glasses perched on his nose, his gaze sincere yet carrying an otherworldly quality, as if he were a part of this realm. "Jason," he said, his voice soft but clear, "you've been through a lot, haven't you?" I nodded, feeling the weight of the fear and emptiness from the accident still pressing on my mind. "My heart stopped twice," I whispered, "and everything I had achieved feels meaningless." Dr. Andrews nodded, as though he could see straight through my soul. "You've spent your life pursuing knowledge, studying history, stories of kings and queens. But in that pursuit you may have overlooked a greater truth, the need for faith and connection to the eternal." His words struck deep into the void of my soul, a void I had tried to fill with books and fame. "I thought I could find meaning through the pages of history," I admitted, "but now it all seems empty." "Faith is not about having all the answers," he responded, his voice firm yet warm. "It is about trust, trusting in a plan greater than yourself. Remember the words of the Lord, 'What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul?' Your achievements have value, but they are nothing compared to the eternal soul you possess." In that moment, a spark of hope ignited within me, like a small flame in the storm. "Dr. Andrews, I want to believe again. I want to find that connection." He smiled, a smile full of encouragement. "It's never too late to return to the Lord. Open your heart and He will lead you home." As his image faded, the darkness around me began to dissolve, replaced by a warm glow. I felt clarity, as if the veil that had covered my soul was lifted. This near-death experience was not the end, but an opportunity for me to rediscover my faith, to explore a purpose far beyond the pages of books and earthly legacies. Dr. Andrews's final words echoed in my mind, "Believe, and you will find true meaning." But the journey didn't end there. As the gentle light enveloped me, I drifted into another realm, where darkness still prevailed, cold and suffocating. The whispers of lost souls echoed, carrying despair and regret. Their faces appeared, etched with a longing for redemption they would never achieve. I could feel the weight of my own regrets, the years spent tirelessly pursuing knowledge, the praise, the fleeting fame. All of it now felt like dust blown in the wind. In that realm of suffering, I realized that my life, with all that I had once considered important, was merely a distraction from deeper truths. Stories of kings and queens, lectures, books, they could not fill the emptiness in my soul. But amidst the despair, the glimmer of hope from Dr. Andrews' words still shone through, reminding me that there was still a path ahead, a path of faith and redemption. In the realm of dreams, I found myself walking down a strange path, unsure of the destination. Before me, a crowd had gathered on the other side of the road, lined up eagerly awaiting something. I crossed over to see what was happening. They were receiving tickets to enter a massive, grand building, which I vaguely recognized as Buckingham Palace. The atmosphere was lively, with people impatient to get inside, but the guards only allowed those with tickets to pass. For some unknown reason, an invisible force urged me to join the line. I stood there, waiting, though my heart was filled with unease. When the first group of people exited the palace, I was horrified to realize they were no longer human. Each person had a horn growing from their forehead, their bodies distorted like beasts, holding gold, diamonds, and glittering treasures, but the crowd around me seemed blind to the truth, only seeing the riches in their hands, which made them even more eager to enter. Fear rose within me, but my body felt controlled, unable to move or speak. When it was my turn, I realized what they handed out was not a ticket but a strange mark. Women received it on their foreheads, men on their wrists. In a moment of destiny, I summoned all my courage, refusing the mark and deciding not to enter. The guards grew angry and moved toward me to take me. I ran, sometimes feeling like I was flying, but then an invisible force pulled me down. My strength was draining, and the guards were getting closer. Just as they were about to catch me, a voice echoed in my mind. "Call on the name of Jesus!" I screamed, "Jesus!" immediately. A thunderous roar and a flash of lightning erupted, and the guards collapsed to the ground, motionless. Suddenly an angel appeared, radiant with light. The angel lifted me onto his shoulder like a child and soared into the sky. I asked where we were going, and he answered, "The Lord has chosen you to witness the second death of a great leader." Before I could comprehend, I found myself in a different place, a vast desert. Far in the distance, a boiling lake appeared, but it wasn't water, it was fire. The fire was white from afar, turning blue as we approached, fierce and all-consuming. The angel said he would take me into the lake of fire to witness something. I was afraid, but he reassured me that the presence of the Lord would protect us. I trusted him and followed. We reached an ancient gate, rusted but strong, which opened by itself. From within I heard loud cries, wails and groans. As we passed through a smaller gate, the cries grew more agonizing. I asked the angel if we were safe, and he nodded in confirmation. The fire surrounded us, but strangely I did not feel any heat. A path appeared, leading us through a place resembling a prison where souls were locked in individual cells. The angel stopped before a small cell, marked with the inscription E.M. He explained it was the name of the person inside, Elizabeth Alexandra Mary, Queen Elizabeth. I was stunned when I saw her, no longer the majestic queen, but a frail figure, wearing tattered clothes, her feet chained, her face contorted in pain from invisible tortures, her teeth ground together, the sound of her suffering clear. I wondered how someone so powerful could end up in such a state. The angel looked up to the sky, his voice deep with sorrow. She was admired by the world, owned everything, but lacked salvation in Jesus Christ. She refused to be reborn, leading many down the wrong path, committing evil in the darkness, thinking no one saw, but the Lord sees everything. My heart felt heavy with compassion but also filled with terror. The angel gestured for me to leave. As I turned away, I heard her cries echoing, blending with the wails of other souls. I knew I couldn't stay. I ran, crossing the fire, passing through the desert, leaving behind the lake of fire and the image of the suffering queen. My heart was full of questions about the journey ahead and about the second queen I would meet. The suffocating darkness around me suddenly ripped apart by a strange sound, initially faint like a distant bell, then growing clearer, vibrating with energy that awakened something dormant within me. The anticipation mixed with doubt made my heart race. I had just witnessed Queen Elizabeth II in the lake of fire, weary and in pain, so when I felt drawn toward the source of the sound, I wondered whether this was another illusion or the truth about her. From the thick fog, a figure emerged, radiant amid the gloom. As the image became clearer, I was stunned. It was Queen Elizabeth II, regal and powerful as depicted in history, yet bearing a profound sorrow, as if burdened by her own choices. Which one was the real her? What was her true fate? "Jason Hastings," she spoke, her voice resonating both distant and familiar, piercing through my soul. "You stand at the crossroads, don't you?" Her gaze was sharp, as if she could see through all the secrets I had kept hidden. "You've studied my life, analyzed my reign, but do you understand the cost of power and fame?" I froze, my mind in turmoil. I had seen her, or a version of her, in unimaginable suffering. "Excuse, ma'am," I stammered, my voice trembling. "I just saw another image of you in the lake of fire being tortured. How do I know you are real? How can I understand your true fate?" She smiled faintly, a soft warmth barely visible, yet her eyes betrayed a deep sorrow. "Many look to me for answers, for inspiration, but few understand the burden I carry. The crown, the responsibility, they devoured my life, leading me astray from the true meaning of existence. I lost the most important thing." Her confession struck like a lightning bolt, illuminating the dark corners of my soul, but I still had doubts. If she was real, why was she here, not in that realm of suffering? "But you are the symbol of strength and stability," I said, trying to find the truth. "How could you lose your faith if you are the queen I'm speaking with now?" "I was swept into the flow of my role," she admitted, her voice tinged with regret. "The rituals, the duties, they seemed essential, but in reality they pulled me away from the simple acts of faith. In my effort to sustain the monarchy, I neglected my relationship with God." Her words reflected my own journey, but the question of her fate still haunted me. I confessed, I also ran from faith, thinking history held all the answers, that knowledge could replace belief. But now, standing here, I am lost. And I don't know if you or that image represent the truth about Queen Elizabeth. "Knowledge without faith is a barren land," she responded, her voice deep with wisdom. "I reached the pinnacle of power, but the emptiness there is beyond imagination. I thought my achievements defined my worth, but they only masked the deep longing within my soul. In this dark place, I realize it all revolves around faith. Faith in something greater than oneself." The darkness around us flickered, revealing the pained faces of nearby souls. Her gaze deepened, her words heavy with meaning. "Jason," she continued, her voice firm yet sad, as if reflecting on a lifetime. "You stand at the crossroads, where the past meets eternity. The duties I carried as a queen were not merely responsibilities, they were burdens that led me away from the destined path. Every day I wore the jewels of royalty, but beneath the crown was a heart struggling with its own faith." I listened, drawn into the rare sincerity, but still questioning whether this was another test. "In the final days of my life, the wisdom of King Solomon haunts me," she said, her voice softening as if recalling painful memories. "He, the wisest of kings, blessed with wealth and knowledge beyond the ordinary, but even he lost his way, placing his trust in power and earthly riches rather than in God." The air felt heavy, her words echoing in the space. The story of Solomon, once the focus of my studies, now served as a vivid warning. "He built great temples, accumulated vast treasures," she pondered, her gaze distant, "but in doing so he lost the true source of wisdom. What should have honored God became a distraction, leading him away from his grace." The image of Solomon emerged as a cautionary tale. "His journey is a warning, Jason," she said urgently, her eyes locking onto mine with intensity, making my heart race. I too became caught up in the duties of the crown, in maintaining the image of power and stability, to the point where I neglected my relationship with the Most High. I thought my position gave me purpose, but it only hid the longing in my soul. She paused, her face a mixture of regret and enlightenment. "There are verses in Proverbs that now resound within me, verses I once overlooked in my pursuit of fame. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths." That truth cut through my doubts. Her words awakened something deep within me, yet questions about her still lingered. Was she real, or merely an image to test me? "Jason," she continued, "earthly accomplishments are as fleeting as the sunlight, brilliant yet quickly fading. In Ecclesiastes we learn that all is vanity and striving after the wind. I lived in palaces of power, but in the silence of my heart I found the greatest emptiness. My achievements paled in comparison to God's eternal love." A wave of enlightenment washed over me, though the question of her fate still haunted me. "Your achievements are not in vain, Jason," she reassured me, her voice stronger now. "But they should lead you to God, not away from him. The path to eternal life is built on faith, not just understanding." The darkness danced, the echoes of her struggle mingling with my revelations. A spark of hope ignited, intertwined with faith, urging me to open my heart to God's love. "Even in the depths of despair, when the world seems to forget you, God is always present," she said gently. "He will not abandon you. He will lead you home." The darkness dissipated, as if her words illuminated my soul. This experience was not just about facing destruction, but an invitation to return to the faith I had lost. "Trust in Him, Jason," she urged, her voice a steadfast reminder. "Let the wisdom of the ages guide you, and remember that it is never too late to embrace the truth God places before you." But as she faded, I still wondered, was she the real queen, or just another lesson? Was her true fate in the lake of fire, or here, in this final piece of advice? As the image of the second queen faded into darkness, I stood still in a terrifying silence. The two versions of her, one frail, suffering in the lake of fire, and the other dignified, sharing wisdom about faith, left my mind in turmoil. Who was the true Queen Elizabeth II? What was her real fate? Was she suffering in the eternal flames, or had she found enlightenment? And why was I shown these contradictory visions? I felt as if I were trapped between two worlds, unable to discern the truth. I closed my eyes, trying to find some anchor amidst the storm of doubt. The words of both queens echoed in my mind, stirring up the fear that my life, with all the years I had spent studying history, might lead to the same emptiness. If the knowledge I had painstakingly built didn't lead me to the truth, then what could? Suddenly, a gentle light filled the space, not blinding but warm, as though an embrace was enveloping me. I opened my eyes and found myself standing in a lush green meadow, stretching out beneath a clear sky. In the distance, a shimmering river flowed peacefully, and by the riverbank, a figure stood, radiant but not frightening. The figure wore white, and their face exuded a peace beyond imagination. I knew instantly. This was Jesus, the one I had heard about in my childhood but had forgotten over the years. "Jason," he spoke, his voice gentle yet full of authority, as if each word carried the power to shape the universe. "You have seen much, and your heart is full of questions. Do not be afraid, for I am here to guide you through the darkness." I knelt, tears flowing uncontrollably. "Lord," I whispered, my voice trembling, "I saw Queen Elizabeth in suffering, and then I saw her full of wisdom. I don't know what is true. I don't understand why I've seen these things or how to find my way back to you. I fear I've gone too far, that I'm not worthy." He smiled, and that smile dispelled all doubts within me. "Jason, the visions of the Queen are not for you to judge her fate, but for you to look into your own soul. Every person stands at a crossroads, where they must choose between earthly crowns and the eternal light of me. She, with all her power and fame, is a reminder that the treasures of this world will fade away if they are not anchored in my love." I lowered my head, feeling the weight of the years spent living apart from faith. But I've spent my whole life studying history, seeking meaning in the stories of kings and queens. Now, I see it all as empty. I fear I've missed the most important thing. "You have not missed me," he replied, his voice firm like stone. "I have always been here, even when you were lost in books and fame. What you have learned is not in vain, but it only has value when it brings you closer to me. You have seen the emptiness of the world through these visions, and now I invite you to walk a new path, the path of faith and love." He raised his hand, and a stream of light flowed from his hand, touching my chest. I felt a warmth spread, as if every wound in my soul, the doubt, the regret, the emptiness, was being healed. "But what must I do, Lord?" I asked, my voice filled with longing. "The road ahead is still unclear, and I don't know if I have the strength to continue." "You do not have to walk alone," he said, his gaze full of compassion. "I will be the light guiding your way, the strength in your weakness. These visions are a call for you to let go of the pride of worldly wisdom and place your trust in me. You do not need to understand every mystery, such as the fate of the Queen, to find peace. Just believe that I am guiding you, and I will bring you home." I looked up at him, my heart filled with newfound hope. "But why have I been chosen, Lord? I am just a scholar, someone who has turned away from you for so many years." "I choose you because I see your heart," he answered, his voice gentle yet firm. "You have sought the truth in history, but now I call you to bring my truth to the world, not through books, but through the way you live, with humility, love, and faith. Let your life become a story that honors me, not the glory of man." As he spoke, the meadow around me seemed to glow, and the river reflected that light as if it were an eternal promise. I felt a new strength rise within me, not from knowledge or achievement, but from the belief that God was with me. "But what if I fail, Lord?" I asked, still with some worry in my voice. "What if I get lost again?" "I will never leave you," he affirmed, his voice echoing like a vow. "Whenever you are weak, call my name, as you did before the gods. I will lift you up as I did in the vision. The path ahead will not be easy, but I will walk with you, step by step." The image of him slowly faded, but his words still resonated in my mind. "Believe, Jason, and let me lead you. Your life now belongs to me, and I will make it shine for my glory." I stood up, feeling lighter than ever. Though the question about the Queen's fate still remained unanswered, I knew it was no longer the focus. These visions were a call for me to let go of the old path, to release the pride in my intellect, and to step into a new journey, a journey guided by God's love and light. I woke up in the sterile hospital room, the sharp scent of disinfectant in the air, the steady beeping of machines like a distant heartbeat. The near-death experience flooded back, merging with the haunting voice of the Queen. Her words reminded me of the truths I had once avoided, like a weight lifted from my chest, offering me a second chance at truly living. Her reflections on how royal duties led her away from God, and the wisdom of King Solomon that haunted her despite being at the height of power, ignited within me a desire for a deeper meaning. The contrast between her grandeur and humility became a flame that illuminated my soul. Lying there in the hospital bed, I reached for the Bible beside me. The worn, familiar pages felt like they had been waiting for me all along. I read, letting the words of God pour in like a healing balm. Proverbs and Ecclesiastes stood out, the wisdom resounding, "Vanity of vanities, all is vanity." The truth sank deep, making everything I had once pursued, fame, success, seem empty compared to the peace that comes from faith. I realized I wasn't just recovering physically. I was undergoing a spiritual rebirth. Day by day, I immersed myself in the teachings of Jesus Christ. His love and grace filled the spaces that were once impossible to fill. This awakening was an opportunity to reshape my life, to align my actions with this new faith. I felt compelled to share my journey, to be a voice for those struggling with doubt. I openly spoke of my encounter with the Queen, how her words challenged me to face the choices in my own life. At church services, I urged everyone to seek the Lord. In Bible study groups, I guided others through stories of faith and redemption, emphasizing that salvation comes from a humble heart, not knowledge. As I shared, I saw curiosity flicker in the eyes of those listening, hope blossoming in their hearts. I became a witness to redemption, embracing the simplicity of faith. No titles, no achievements, only love and compassion. This new path, illuminated by the Queen's wisdom and my awakening, led me to a life anchored in faith. I walk forward, carrying the mission to spread the light of God, believing that each story shared is a seed planted in the hearts of others, waiting to sprout into hope and spiritual connection. No matter what we do, we will face judgment. It doesn't matter our status or wealth. If the Queen wasn't spared because of her earthly glory, neither will we be. Do not be deceived by the material things that will be left behind when we die. Think about the judgment that awaits. Today is the day for salvation. No one knows when their time will come, so repent and dedicate your life to Jesus Christ before it's too late. Don't let your fate be like that of the girl in this story, who chose to forsake the perfect life God had given her. The end result was that she was cast down to hell alongside Lord Hitler. Have you ever thought that after death everything just ends? No heaven, no hell, nothing? I used to believe that too, but then I died, and what I experienced on the other side changed me forever. Welcome to Eternal Bible Stories. Today, I will tell you my own story, a story of someone who was once an atheist, who did not believe in the existence of God. But after death, I saw hell, the most terrifying place a human could ever imagine, and then I was given the chance to see heaven, a place filled with light and love. What I am about to share may change the way you see life and death. If you are interested in real near-death experiences, hit the like button and subscribe right now. If you also have your own story, send it to eternalbiblestories@gmail.com. And now, listen closely, because what I am about to tell you may change the way you see life forever. My name is Brian Melvin, and many years ago I was an atheist. Not just someone who didn't believe in God, but someone who openly mocked those who had faith. I saw religion as nothing more than a crutch for the weak, a fairy tale for those afraid to face the reality of life and death. I took pride in debating believers, tearing apart their arguments with logic and reason, convinced that science had all the answers. But everything changed the day I unknowingly drank contaminated water. Not long after, I contracted cholera, and my body began shutting down at an alarming rate. The dehydration was severe, leaving me weak, delirious, and barely able to function. I felt my strength fading with every passing minute, and deep down I knew I was dying. It was a terrifying realization, but I held on to the belief that when my heart stopped, when my brain activity ceased, that would be the end. No soul, no afterlife, no judgment, just eternal nothingness. And so, as I took what I thought was my final breath, I expected complete darkness, an endless void of unconsciousness. But I was wrong. In that very moment, I was still conscious. Instead of fading into oblivion, I felt myself separating from my body, rising effortlessly into the air. I could see everything with perfect clarity. The room, the people around me, and most disturbingly, my own lifeless body lying motionless below. I should have been terrified, but I wasn't. Instead, I felt a strange sense of peace, as if I had been unshackled from a heavy burden I never even realized I was carrying. There was no pain, no fear, just an overwhelming sense of freedom. I continued to rise, moving effortlessly through the ceiling, passing beyond the physical world into an expanse of darkness stretching infinitely in all directions. Yet this darkness was not empty. It was alive, shifting, almost watching me. Then, in the distance, I saw it. A radiant light unlike anything I had ever seen before. It wasn't just bright, it was alive, pulsing with an energy so intense, so powerful, that I couldn't look away. And then I heard it, a melody so beautiful, so profound, that human words fail to describe it. It wasn't just music, it was a message, a revelation, as if the very essence of the universe was being woven into sound. I could feel it speaking to my soul, revealing truths far beyond my comprehension. In that moment, I knew I was in the presence of something far greater than myself. This was no illusion, no hallucination caused by a dying brain. This was real, more real than anything I had ever experienced in my physical life. For the first time, I understood that God wasn't just an abstract concept or a creation of human imagination. He was real, He was infinite, and He was right there before me. But just as I began to feel an overwhelming sense of love and belonging, something changed. The warmth of the light turned into something else, something I had not expected. Suddenly, I felt completely exposed, as if every hidden thought, every action, and every motive of my heart was being laid bare. This light was not just love, it was judgment. And as I stood in its presence, every mistake, every selfish decision, every time I had rejected the truth, flashed before my eyes in perfect detail. There was no way to deny it, no way to justify or explain myself. I had spent my life mocking and rejecting the very being now standing before me, and in that moment I realized I was in serious trouble. Suddenly I felt myself descending and found myself standing before a being, one whom I knew instantly, without a doubt, was Jesus Christ. He didn't need to introduce himself. There was no question in my mind. I simply knew. The moment I met his gaze, something inside me shattered. It was as if his eyes saw straight through me, piercing into the deepest parts of my soul. Under his gaze, I saw myself for who I truly was. Not the person I had convinced myself I was, but the reality of who I had been. Arrogant, selfish, sinful. Then Jesus showed me something that left me speechless. I saw every moment he had tried to save me. Times when he had reached out, when I had been spared from accidents that should have taken my life, when people of faith had come to me, urging me to repent. I had ignored them all. Every chance, every sign, every warning, dismissed. Then he looked at me and spoke. "You cannot enter heaven, for if you were allowed in, you would defile it. But now you will see a land that no one wishes to remember, yet none can forget. When you feel overwhelmed, call upon my name and my title. Whether you return to earth or not, that has yet to be decided." The moment he finished speaking, a force stronger than anything I had ever felt grabbed hold of me and threw me backward toward a massive doorway. The door rolled up like a scroll, and before I could react, I was pulled into utter, suffocating darkness. I was falling, not floating, not drifting, falling violently, spiraling downward into something beyond comprehension. The air around me was thick, hot, and heavy, like I had been swallowed by a furnace. A deafening roar filled my ears, a mixture of screams, wails, and disturbing guttural voices speaking in languages I had never heard before. It wasn't just chaotic noise, it was torment, a symphony of suffering that never ended. The deeper I fell, the more intense it became. It was as if every sound carried the weight of eternal agony, a pain that could never be silenced. And then the stench hit me. It was overwhelming, a nauseating combination of rotting flesh, sulfur, and decay, so intense that I felt like I was suffocating. Every breath I took was filled with it, making my stomach churn, my throat burn. It was as if the very air in this place had been poisoned with death itself. I gasped, trying to clear my lungs, but there was no relief. Just the heavy, sickening realization that this was what eternity smelled like here. I kept falling, faster and faster, unable to stop myself, unable to grasp onto anything. My surroundings were shifting, changing, like an endless vortex of dark clouds and flickering flames, but none of it made sense. There was no up or down, no sense of direction. It was as if I was being dragged into a place that existed outside of time and space. And then I hit the ground. The impact was brutal, knocking the air from my lungs, but the pain didn't stop there. The ground beneath me wasn't solid, it was jagged, burning, alive. It seared into my flesh and I scrambled to get up, but the very earth seemed to cling to me, almost like it wanted to consume me whole. My hands sank slightly into the surface, and a horrifying realization hit me. This ground was made of something living, something suffering. It was like I had landed on a sea of writhing, tortured souls, their forms compressed into an unrecognizable mass beneath my feet. And they were screaming. I forced myself to my feet, my entire body trembling as I took in my surroundings. Before me stretched a vast, desolate landscape, dry, cracked, and unbearably hot, as if the ground had been scorched by fire for eternity. The sky above was a sickly dark red, pulsing as though it were alive, filled with swirling black smoke that moved like a living thing. Jagged mountains loomed in the distance, their peaks stretching into an endless void, and in the farthest reaches of my vision, I saw rivers of fire twisting and churning like liquid lava, stretching as far as the eye could see. But the most unsettling part? The silence between the screams. It wasn't just emptiness. It was a feeling of hopelessness so deep that it pressed against me like a physical force. And then I saw it. A structure stood in the distance, a decaying house, barely holding itself together, its walls sagging, its roof caving in. It looked out of place, like a relic from the physical world trapped in a nightmare. Something about it felt familiar, but I couldn't place why. My feet moved toward it before my mind could process what I was doing, and then they appeared. Figures began emerging from the house, people I once knew. Their faces were warm, familiar, their voices soft and welcoming. They smiled as they approached me, their expressions eerily reassuring, as if they were greeting an old friend. For a split second, I wanted to believe them. I wanted to believe that I had somehow found a place of refuge in this hellish wasteland. But everything about this place felt wrong. The ground beneath me pulsed, the sky above me whispered, and the air itself thickened around me, suffocating me with a weight I couldn't see but could feel pressing down on my soul. Then I looked into their eyes, and their eyes changed. The moment I locked eyes with them, their pupils elongated, turning yellow and slit-like, just like a reptile's. And in that instant their entire forms shifted, their faces contorted, their smiles twisted into something unnatural, and in a flash, the illusion shattered. The people I thought I knew were no longer human. Their skin became grey and leathery, their limbs elongated and sharp, their teeth jagged and dripping with saliva. They let out a guttural growl, their bodies convulsing and twitching as if they had been waiting for this moment. And then they lunged at me. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in terror. Their claws swiped at me, their teeth snapped inches from my face. They moved with unnatural speed, circling me like predators playing with their prey. Their screams were deafening, filled with a rage and hunger that made my very soul tremble. The air itself seemed to tighten around me, suffocating, pressing down like an invisible force that wanted to crush me into nothingness. The overwhelming realization hit me. I was in hell. And then I remembered. The words Jesus had spoken to me before I was cast into this place. When you feel overwhelmed, call upon my name and my title. In that moment, I had no other choice. I opened my mouth and screamed with everything I had. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. The reaction was instantaneous. The creatures froze in place, their bodies jerking as if struck by an unseen force. Their snarls turned into screeches of pain, their forms twisting and writhing in agony. They clawed at their own faces, their yellow eyes filled with something I never thought I'd see in them, fear. They could torment me, they could terrorize me, but they could not touch me. Because the name of Jesus had power, even in this place, even in the depths of hell. The creatures began to back away, their faces contorted in rage and frustration. They wanted to tear me apart, but they couldn't. They wanted to drag me further into the depths of this nightmare, but something was holding them back, something greater than them. The very ground beneath me trembled. The air pulsed, and I realized this place was reacting to the name of Jesus. It wasn't just the creatures that feared him. This entire realm did. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if I would be trapped here forever. But in that moment, one thing became abundantly clear. Jesus was the only way out. A creature led me through this forsaken place. It wasn't human. Nothing in this realm was. It stood at about 1.4 meters tall, with rough reptilian skin that looked like it had been scorched and hardened over centuries. Its breath was so foul, so rancid, that waves of heat rippled out from its mouth, distorting the air like a mirage on scorching pavement. I could barely stand the smell, but I had no choice but to follow. In my mind, I named it lizard breath. Without speaking, the creature reached out with its gnarled, clawed fingers and tore open the very fabric of the air. It was as if reality itself was just a veil, and it was peeling it back to reveal something much worse beyond. It motioned for me to step through. I hesitated, but then I realized I had no control here. I was not in charge. I was nothing in this place. So I stepped forward. The moment I crossed the threshold, I found myself on a dusty, barren road, the air thick with smoke and ash. Surrounding me were countless towering structures, stacked one on top of another like prison cells, stretching endlessly in every direction. These were not buildings, they were confinements. Holding cells of suffering, cages of torment. The sky above swirled with dark, churning vortexes, massive tornado-like spirals that seemed to reach down, sucking people into the air before violently dropping them into these cells. Others were dragged, kicking and screaming, by grotesque demonic entities, pulled toward their fate, thrown into their own personal prisons of suffering. I peered into one of the cells. Inside, I saw a man tormented without end. He had been a man who, in life, took pleasure in mocking and humiliating others, belittling them, making them feel worthless, feeding off their pain for his own amusement. Now, he was the one being mocked. Surrounding him were twisted, nightmarish creatures, their mouths stretching unnaturally wide as they hurled insults and cruel laughter. Every word cut deep, each taunt digging into his very being, shredding away any sense of self-worth he had left. But no matter how much he screamed, no matter how much he begged for it to stop, it never did. I moved to another cell. Inside, I saw a former pastor, a man who once stood at the pulpit, preaching righteousness, yet behind closed doors he abused his position, using his authority to manipulate and seduce women. Now he was trapped, his body engulfed in a never-ending fire of desire, a burning that he could never satisfy. His cravings consumed him, but there was no relief. He clawed at himself, writhed in agony, yet the more he suffered, the more the fire grew. The very thing he had fed in life had become his torment in death, an eternal hunger that could never be fulfilled. And then I saw something different, a section unlike the others. It radiated a deeper, darker presence. I could feel the sheer weight of evil pressing against me as I walked toward it. It was a place for the worst of the worst. I stepped toward one particular chamber, and my breath caught in my throat. It looked like a crematorium, a gas chamber straight out of Auschwitz. The walls were charred black, the air thick with a stench of burning flesh, the faint sound of gasping, panicked breaths filling the space. And inside was Adolf Hitler. His punishment was far beyond anything I had seen. I watched as he relived over and over again every moment of horror his victims had suffered, not as a spectator, but as them. He felt their pain, their terror, their final moments. He felt the brutal separation from their families, the dehumanizing cruelty, the suffocating panic as the gas filled their lungs. But here's what shocked me most. It didn't change him. He wasn't remorseful, he wasn't repentant. If anything, he had become even more twisted. His hatred had not diminished, it had intensified. His rage and malice had not been stripped away, it had grown stronger. His very essence was being consumed by the same evil he had unleashed upon the world. And in that moment, I understood something I had never grasped before. Hell wasn't just about punishment. It was the full realization of who you had chosen to become. These souls weren't just suffering, they were becoming the very worst versions of themselves, eternally spiraling deeper and deeper into the consequences of their own corruption. There was no redemption here. There was no second chance. Only the inescapable, undeniable reality that they had made their choice, and now that choice would consume them forever. As I stood there, overwhelmed by the sheer horror of everything I had seen, I felt something inside me begin to break. The torment, the suffering, the endless agony. I knew I couldn't take it any longer. I could feel the weight of eternity pressing down on me, the terrifying realization that this was not a dream, not an illusion, this was real. And if I didn't do something, I would never escape. And then I remembered. Jesus had told me what to do. I took a deep breath, or at least I tried to, and with everything I had left, I screamed his name. Jesus! 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 Instantly, everything shifted. I felt a powerful force grab me, pulling me upward, yanking me away from the nightmare that had swallowed me whole. The creatures, the cells, the endless suffering. It all began to fade into the distance as I was lifted out of the pit. The howls of rage and torment grew fainter, as if something was pulling me back to where I was meant to be. And then I woke up. I gasped for air, my lungs burning as if I had been drowning. I was no longer in hell, I was back in my body. My eyes flew open, my chest heaving, sweat pouring down my face. My whole body trembled as I struggled to process what had just happened. The room around me was spinning, the sounds of the world returning like a distant echo. I had returned. Later, I would learn that my neighbor had found me unconscious and rushed me to the hospital. The doctors diagnosed me with cholera, a disease that had nearly shut my body down completely. They weren't sure if I would survive, but somehow, against all odds, I did. But even though my body had been healed, my mind was not. The memories of hell wouldn't leave me alone. The images haunted me. The sounds followed me into my sleep. The stench of burning flesh, the twisted laughter, the endless torment. It all played in my mind, over and over again, like a nightmarish film I couldn't turn off. I had survived, but I wasn't free. I was terrified. I was afraid to sleep, afraid to close my eyes, afraid that if I did, I might end up back there again. I had seen too much, and no matter how hard I tried to convince myself that it had been just a dream, just a hallucination, just a near-death experience, I knew the truth. I had been to hell, and I never wanted to go back. One evening, after yet another sleepless night, I reached my breaking point. I sat alone in my apartment, slumped into my old beanbag chair, staring blankly at the wall. I had nowhere left to run. I had tried to ignore it, tried to push it away, but the fear never left me. I couldn't do this on my own. So, in a voice barely louder than a whisper, I spoke the only words that I had left in me. Jesus, I never want to go back there. Please save me. I belong to you. The moment the words left my mouth, something incredible happened. A cold wind swept through the room. It wasn't just a slight breeze, it was a powerful, refreshing presence that wrapped around me like a blanket. My entire body shivered, but not from fear, from relief. I looked over at the thermostat. The outside temperature was 94 DF-DEC, and yet my apartment felt cool, peaceful, completely untouched by the summer heat. And in that moment, I knew. I had been reborn. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid anymore. The memories were still there, but they didn't own me. The fear no longer controlled me. Something had changed inside me, something eternal. I had been given a second chance, and this time, I wouldn't waste it. Even though I had been saved, the memories of hell never left me. No matter how hard I tried to move on, the horror of what I had seen haunted my mind. I couldn't escape the images, the sounds, the overwhelming terror of that place. I lived in fear, afraid that if I slipped up, if I failed in any way, I would end up back there again. I tried everything to hold on to my salvation. I did good deeds, I prayed constantly, I lived as righteously as I could, hoping that it would be enough to keep me from ever going back. But no matter what I did, I always felt uneasy. always worried that one mistake, one failure would send me back into the darkness. I didn't understand grace. I didn't understand what Jesus had truly done for me. Then one day, Jesus opened my eyes to see heaven. I don't know if I was taken up in my physical body or if it was just my soul, but what I experienced healed something deep inside me. The fear, the doubt, the anxiety that had followed me since my return from hell, all of it melted away in an instant. I found myself standing in a vast open field, stretching endlessly in every direction. But this wasn't just any field, it was alive. The grass shimmered with light, swaying gently, as if responding to a song I couldn't hear but could somehow feel. The sky above was the most vibrant shade of blue I had ever seen, and the air was filled with a peace so pure that I could feel it settle deep in my soul. There was something different about the air here. It wasn't just oxygen, it was life itself. I breathed in deeply, and for the first time I felt completely whole, completely new, completely at peace. It was as if every wound, every burden, every weight I had ever carried simply didn't exist anymore. And then I saw the people. Everywhere I looked, people were reuniting with their loved ones, embracing, laughing, crying tears of joy. It was unlike anything I had ever seen on earth. There was no sorrow, no sadness, only pure love and restoration. It was as if every broken relationship, every separation, every painful goodbye had been erased, replaced by the joy of being together again, forever. I saw a mother who had once been broken with grief because she had aborted her child. She had carried guilt and pain for years, believing that she had lost her baby forever. She had lived her whole life thinking God would never forgive her, that she would have to bear the weight of that decision for all eternity. And then she saw him. A young boy, radiant with joy, came running toward her, his little arms stretched wide. The mother fell to her knees, sobbing, but before she could even speak, the child wrapped his arms around her and whispered, "Hi, Mummy, we have all of eternity together now, don't cry anymore." The moment he spoke, her tears dried instantly. In their place, a joy unlike anything I had ever seen flooded her face. Every ounce of shame, every burden of regret, gone, replaced by pure, overwhelming peace. I saw a father reunited with a son he had lost too soon. I saw brothers and sisters embracing after years of separation. I saw grandparents meeting grandchildren they had never known on earth. And with every reunion, the same thing happened. The pain of the past disappeared, replaced by perfect love and healing. Here, in this place, there was no more pain, no more sorrow, no more regret. There was only redemption, only love, only peace. In heaven, no one was judged by their past. No one carried the weight of their mistakes. Every single person here had been fully accepted, fully loved, fully restored, not because of what they had done, but because of what Jesus had done for them. And at that moment, I understood something that changed me forever. I had spent so much time trying to earn my place in heaven, afraid that if I didn't do enough, I would lose my salvation. But now I saw the truth. Salvation was never about what I could do. It was about what Jesus had already done. I saw him then, Jesus. He stood in the distance, his presence radiating unimaginable love. And when our eyes met, I finally understood. He had paid the price. He had carried my sins. He had suffered in my place. And heaven wasn't a reward for the righteous. It was a gift for the redeemed. I didn't need to fight for it. I didn't need to strive for it. It had already been given to me, freely, through the love and sacrifice of Jesus Christ. When I returned to earth, I was a different person. The fear that had once controlled me was gone. I no longer lived in anxiety, trying to be good enough for God. I finally understood that my place in heaven was not something I had to fight for. It was something Jesus had already secured for me. I didn't have to strive anymore. I didn't have to be afraid anymore. Because salvation wasn't something I could earn. It was a free gift, given in love, paid for by Jesus Christ himself. I had been given a second chance, and now I had a purpose: to share this truth with everyone who would listen.